What is a Kegel, and should you do it to prepare for birth? First of all, a Kegel is a pelvic floor contraction. So you're bringing the two ends of a muscle closer together. A Kegel is named after Dr. Kegel, and I like to call them pelvic floor contractions again because I do not believe that these men deserve naming parts of our body or movements of our body after themselves, okay? So the pelvic floor contraction is a shortening of the pelvic floor, bringing the two ends closer together. What is interesting is that during childbirth, what we need that pelvic floor to do is we need it to yield and lengthen and get out of the way. So if our only approach to preparing our pelvic floor for birth is creating this shortening load, now I don't have that ability to have that full range of motion. It can create some problems. So when someone has a lot of tension in their pelvic floor, or maybe they have too much tension on one side versus the other, now baby is going to have a more difficult time getting through that middle of the pelvis where baby starts to meet the pelvic floor. If one side is tighter than the other, maybe the baby needs to tilt their head to the side to get through. Now that's a bigger surface area that can make that birthing process take longer. It can make pushing take longer. It can also create the need for a more forceful pushing effort. So some issues that may have been assigned that pelvic floor could have used more yield during the birthing process would be a long pushing phase, a baby in a less optimal position, whether their chin wasn't tucked or their head was tilted to the side. It also could be that your pelvic floor didn't feel safe. So it's not just about having a long pelvic floor. It's about having a pelvic floor that responds to pressure and load and feeling safe in that event of childbirth. Because if I'm not feeling safe, what am I going to do? Right? My pelvic floor is going to do that too. And so the goal is to both prepare that pelvic floor to be responsive for birth. And the beautiful thing about this is the same stuff that makes that pelvic floor be able to yield and be responsive for birth also helps that pelvic floor to be responsive for life, for jumping on a trampoline, for singing loudly, for running, right? I want my pelvic floor to know how to respond for everything I ask it to do. I want it to be able to respond for childbirth. I want it to be able to respond when I run. I want it to be able to respond when I sneeze. And so the goal in preparing our pelvic floor for birth is to help it to be responsive for all of our life, including childbirth. There are so many better options for preparing your pelvic floor for birth than the Kegel. However, I will say that the Kegel does have its place. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? What we should do is understand that the goal is not only to have tension, the goal is to have range of motion, and there's a lot of different tools to get us there.